Possible fight of the night. Coming up this weekend at welterweight, we have Portugal's own André Fialho, and were you not impressed in his UFC debut on incredibly short notice against Michel Pereira? He comes out here looking pretty darn good. I mean, you know, if you've seen Fialho compete with either the PFL or LFA or Bellator, that this guy was a very hyped up prospect, and he has some quality fights on his resume. Well, he's going to be taking on Caramel Thunder, Miguel Baeza, who's on the first losing streak of his career because he only lost 2 darn fights in his overall career. 10 wins before that, the finish win over Matt Brown, a big time statement where he kind of withstood a little bit of adversity. The win over Takashi Sato, a big time one. Even before that, beating Hector Aldana, which, hey, it's a win and it's a finish. But for Baeza, this is a guy that gets it done standing. For André Fialho, this is a guy that gets it done with his boxing, but also his offensive wrestling. But his defensive wrestling can leave a little bit to be desired. Will Baeza be able to exploit that? I don't know. But South Florida is going to be more excited for this than they are for the aftermath of Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. You know that because in this fight, we have Sanford MMA taking on MMA Masters. And Matt, if you can't tell, I'm pretty darn excited about this fight.
This should be a phenomenal fight. Forgive me, is it Fight Circus that does the Muay Thai in the phone booths? This could be a fight placed in that setting because these are two guys who do get the majority of their work done, not only on the feet, but in that nice close range where they are susceptible to being hit, where they do have to play sort of that cerebral game on the inside. And that's why I think this fight's going to be so much fun. When you talk about Miguel Baeza and his UFC run, yes, he's 2-2, so it's not all bad.
3-2.
3-2, sorry. But he's had, I don't know, just a very high level of entertainment, I would say, in all of his fights. And that's why we put this as the fight of the night screen. With Baeza, you look at his strengths and they are apparent. He has great punching power. He has really nice combinations too once he settles into the fight. But he's one of these fighters who he lives on the extremes. Offensively, is he very good? Yeah, he is a dynamo offensively. Defensively, does he leave a little bit to be desired? Maybe a lot, because that's the thing about Baeza. Like, in his 5-fight run in the UFC, he has been rocked on multiple occasions in a lot of his fights, be it whether he's won them or lost. And that's something that at the welterweight division, sorry, not the weatherweight division, against someone like André Fialho, who we know has incredible power on the inside, not only with his hands, but with elbows too. It's going to be an interesting fight to see. How does Miguel Baeza approach this fight? Do you think we will see a more hesitant version of Baeza? Because he has been cracked a little bit more, especially lately. Do you think it is time to really reevaluate his career and start making some of those wholesale changes?
Well, the tricky thing is, I mean, he's been finished in his last 2 fights, which is something like durability. You could lean on it before. Again, in the Matt Brown fight, he gets as dropped as a drop without a knockdown gets, and then he comes back, rallies, gets the finish. But if you do look at it for André Fialho, and I know we talked about this before his debut against Pereira, and I picked him to beat Pereira, and it was a fun fight, and it was close. I know it's a unanimous decision win for Michel out of Brazil, but if you look at the 4-fight win streak for André Fialho, a guy that I've been watching for a very long time, since the Bellator days, the James Vick fight. First round, James Vick. Axe kicks, tossing that kick out there like it's a hand and just tickling him to the ear.
That's awful.
But after Fialho kind of crashes that distance in the second round, he's able to go out there and get the finish. Goes over to UAE Warriors, beats Song Hyun Yu. Then he beats Lincoln Puig over with UAE Warriors. Again, first round finish. Then he takes on Stefan Seklic. A recently cut Stefan Seklic off a controversial loss to Dwight Grant. Seklic goes for the takedown, and André Fialho goes, no, get out of there. And Stefan, hey, let go of the takedown, bud, but he didn't. Andrea gets the win there. He loses to Pereira back. That was in January. But again, I referenced it. I mean, this guy has a lot of quality experience to draw from. I mean, a main card fight against Chidi Njokuani, Bellator, 167 back a few years ago, 2016. A fight against Rick Rager. A fight against AJ Matthews, who seemed to fight every other weekend. A win over Javier Torres. Loses to Chris Curtis in a really competitive fight until near the end. Chris Curtis is finally able to get his own takedown. Fights Glaico França in a 2-round fight. Loses majority decision. Then it's overturned to a no contest because Glaico França gets the win. I thought that Fialho got it, but again, it's 2 rounds. Like, we're really kind of grasping at straws. And then he loses to Antonio Dos Santos Jr. over with LFA before the 4-fight run. We talk about Baeza. You talked about it, 3-2 in the UFC. 3 big wins coming in. To answer the question, though, he's supposed to take on Diego Lima, who... It's a long-range striker, but that was going to be Diego's retirement fight, and then he just kind of retired anyway. Now you get André Fialho, a much more game opponent. So it is.
So
a
is
tough
that a
one.
yes? You will think Baez is going to look different?
I think Baez is going to be a little more reserved, possibly, but that could be to his detriment.
No, I couldn't agree more. And it will be interesting to see because this could be one of those fights where it's like, okay, Miguel, fight like you did against Matt Brown. He's like, what?
Y'all must have forgot.
He's like, wait, you've been telling me for the last 2 months, don't ever fight like I did against Matt Brown. And they're like, no. Be offensive in this matchup because this is the one thing about Fiallo's striking style. He'll fall into a rut every now and then of being a really good combination puncher, and then he'll just become like a single strike guy for minutes sometimes on end, and that's not a great thing to do when you are fighting a guy like Baeza, because if we're just looking at both guys' power, I do think Fiallo has more power, and maybe that's just because I do question the durability of Baeza at this stage of his career. Forgive me if I do believe that, just because for Baeza, I don't necessarily think he has a bad chin. Don't get me wrong. If you get dropped by Ponzinibbio, you get hurt by Williams, you get hurt by Brown, like those are all pretty big punchers. We can all agree to that. It's his striking defense that does leave a lot to be desired. When he throws his strikes, he doesn't bring them back to his chin. He brings them back to his chest or his waist, and he can sometimes overthrow his own combinations, and I do worry about if he can't get his own range early, it might look like Ian Gary's fight this past weekend, where his strikes look really good, but you watch how he throws a straight right, and it's like, okay, well, your forearm was at Darian Weeks' head, and your arm just kind of missed him and you overextended. I think if Baeza starts to find himself overextending, that's when Fiallo can get on the inside, land those great hooks in the head.
Left hook.
He's going to land a lot of those really powerful techniques, and I do think that if Fiallo is able to land with power, especially early, we've seen Baeza not really be able to eat power shots in this weight class, and I do think Fiallo, he's at least as heavy-handed as a 39-year-old Matt Brown in 2020, so I do think if he can land that clean shot early, he'll have an effect on Baeza.
The odds in this one, Baeza open to minus 140. He is a minus 180 favorite. If you look at it for Andrea Fiallo, open to plus 120. He is a plus 150. We have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprise test there to you. I'm going to say over under 70% Baeza.
I'll say Fiallo's favorite.
70% Baeza out of 540 total votes. 30% with Fiallo. For the Baeza voters, 51% by knockout. For the Fiallos, it is 56% by knockout. So the fans thinking Baeza, the odds thinking Baeza. We set it up a different way. I've got Andrea Fiallo in this fight.
I'm going to say this. I think the best version of Baeza beats the best version of Fiallo. Yeah. I really do. It's just we haven't seen that version of Baeza in a minute now. And when your striking defense is your Achilles heel at 170 pounds, this isn't a weight class you can screw around and get hit by clean shots at. Like, even lightweight, you don't want to get hit clean by guys that weigh 155 pounds. Normally we think about middleweight, light heavyweight as the big power divisions, but at welterweight, I don't like Baeza's ability to eat shots. I do worry about the activity of Fiallo, but I do think he'll be able to land with power early, and I think he'll be able to beat Baeza.
Fiallo in the second round against Pereira, he was outstruck quite a bit, and in the third round, but he was able to have a very good first round of his own, so we'll see how this one plays out. Both of us going with Portugal's Andrea Fiallo in the underdog role. You let us know who you have, because most likely a lot of people will have Baeza in this one. It should be an amazing fight regardless. We got a couple more big ones at the top of the card that you're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fighting Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.